Welcome to this series of lectures or video lectures on calculus of several variables or multivariable calculus. And this will be a series of lectures in which we hope to sort of cover not just multivariable calculus, but quite a few of the ideas that are involved in a large part of mathematics in these days. Okay? So what we are aiming at is to prove the version of Stokes' theorem on manifolds. Now, Stokes' theorem on manifolds is something that may sound like big names to many people, but what we are going to start off with is something quite elementary. Most of us have seen what is called the fundamental theorem of calculus. And one version of the fundamental theorem of calculus says that integral 0 to 1 of df by dx is equal to f0, about this, f1 minus f0 for functions f that are sufficiently nice. I'm not terribly worried about the class of functions for which this is true, but in most cases, functions that are continuously differentiable, for example, this statement is true. So this is the theorem that we want to prove, okay, for several variables. And what is the statement that is going to be, what is the statement of the theorem that is true that is going to be for several variables? So this is for a function this is for f, which is a function from real numbers to real numbers. What we are going to be worried about is for a function f, which is from Rn. What we're going to be worried about is several variables, Rn to Rm, for example. This is what I mean by a function of several variables. And what is it that we are going to talk about these integrals of various things? Okay? So let me just write this out in a different way, which will sort of help us understand how the statement is going to look like in several variables. Or what is the statement that is going to be true in several variables? So let me just rewrite this a little bit. Now, this I can want to rewrite as, I cancel this dx and dx, which is something that everyone does when you are in school. So what I want to write this as is integral 0 to 1 of df, which I will write as, I will write it as integral over the closed interval 0, 1 of df. And this integral f1 minus f0, I want to write as integral over the set 0, 1 of f. Now, you might be worrying about what is the meaning of integral over a set. Remember, there's a difference. This is the integral over the interval 0, 1, whereas this is the integral over the set 0, 1. And I'm going to be even a bit more mysterious, and I'm going to say that this is equal to integral of f over the set plus 1 and minus 0. Plus 1 sort of makes sense, but what is the meaning of minus 0? So, what I mean by integral of f over the set plus 1 and minus 0 is exactly this. This you can take it to be the definition. Okay? And then I want to write this integral over plus 1 and minus 0 to be, remember this is an interval. One knows what the boundary of this interval is. The boundary of the interval are the 2 points 0 and 1. So, I want to write this as integral of f over the boundary of the set 0, 1. And the boundary of the interval 0, 1 is supposed to be the 2 points plus 1 and 0 with a sign attached. Namely, it is plus 1 and minus 0. So, we have integral of df. Of course, we have to worry about what is the meaning of df. So this is something you have to understand. What is the meaning of df? In this setup, I just mean df by dx dx. And what is the meaning of integral of f over d of 0, 1? D is the boundary. So by this notation, I mean boundary. Whatever I mean by the boundary. Okay? This is an interval. This is a set that we know. Okay? This is the interval 0 to 1, the closed interval 0 to 1. The boundary of the closed interval 0, 1 is the set, the boundary of the closed interval 0, 1 is the set plus 1 and minus 0. And integral over the boundary of the set 0, 1 is defined to be f1 minus f0. So this is the statement that we want to make. What is the statement we want to make? So, the statement we want to make now is, this is called Stokes' theorem. And what it says is that if M is a k minus 1 dimensional manifold, if M is a k dimensional manifold, and omega is a k minus 1 form, and we have additional conditions on n, then integral of omega over boundary of n is equal to integral of d omega over n. Now here also you will understand that what I've written down here is very similar to what I'm writing down here. Only the set that I'm going to talk about, d of n, the boundary of n and n, the d that I have is the same d that I have here. The omega that I have here is the same as this f that I have here. And I'm saying that the integral of the form k minus 1 form over the boundary of the manifold is the same as the integral of the exterior derivative of omega over the manifold M. There are conditions on M, just as I said that there are conditions on this F. And we have to understand in what sense all these conditions come about. And there are lots and lots of things to be understood here. What is the meaning of this symbol? 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 So all these things, we have to understand exactly how they arise and why we are talking about such things. Okay, so this is the idea. This is our final. We will come to a proper statement of Stokes' theorem after a few lectures, maybe towards the end or so, as it is. But for right now, all I want to tell you is that all you must get away from, or the takeaway from this should be that the fundamental theorem of calculus, which is this, integral of the derivative of the function is the value of the function at the two endpoints with signs, and the value of the function at the two endpoints with signs, the difference. This is the classical fundamental theorem of calculus, and Stokes' theorem is the fundamental theorem of calculus when you're talking about one-dimensional objects. Okay? But in the statement of Stokes' theorem, there are many things to be defined, and we have to understand what each of these terms actually mean. Okay, so let's start. Obviously, the first thing we should start with is the definition of derivative. And so, how should the derivative be defined? Is the first question we should sort of try to address. So, in one dimension, everyone knows what the definition of derivative is. Just to remind you, f, so definition, f from R to R, let f be from R to R. If limit of f a plus h minus f a divided by h equal to L, limit when h tends to 0 exists. We say that L is equal to the derivative of f at a, also denoted by f prime of a. So remember, this L right now is a real number. L is an R. If there exists L in R, such that this limit exists, we say that f is differentiable at a and L is said to be the derivative of f at a. So this is the kind of thing we want to define. This is the kind of thing we want to define for, and in some sense you know that what this thing represents is, if you have a curve like that, this is the point A, this is the point FA, then the limit there represents the tangent of the straight line. Straight line is a linear object. So in some sense, if I rewrite this in a slightly different way, what it says that is that fa plus h is equal to, I take it over on the other side, which is fa plus L times h plus a remainder. The remainder will be denoted by r. So a bit of a confusion about this r and this r, so maybe I should denote it by a little r for remainder. So what we are saying is that this fa plus L times h is the derivative, is the linear band which starts at fa, and we are saying that the function f is approximated by this linear band. So this is the definition. So we are talking about what is the definition of a derivative for a function from R real numbers to real numbers, real valued function over real variable. And this is how we write it down. Now the question is that how should I talk about this if you have a function f from Rn to Rk. So the immediate problems that you have here, what are the problems? The problems is, where are A and where should A plus H be? A must be an element in Rn. H must also be an element in Rn. But f A plus H minus f A plus H is an element in Rk. F of A is an element in Rk. Yes? This H is an element in Rn. So how can I divide by a vector is the first question I should worry about. So if I do have this, if I can solve this problem of how to take the derivative of the function, where should this h lie? And h being a vector, how can I divide by it is the question. So there's a slight modification of this, which is essentially this statement that I have written here, which can make sense for a function from Rn to Rk. So I will write this statement down here, which is, so I'm going to put some statement here, and then I'm going to write this statement down, which is f A plus h minus f A minus L times h, and then I'm going to divide it by the h. Remember, h is a vector. What do I mean by dividing by this h? I have to worry about it. And I want to say the limit when h tends to 0 of this quantity should be 0. Now still this definition doesn't make sense, because how am I going to divide by a vector? So obviously the only thing you should be able to divide by are real numbers in this setup. So instead of dividing by the vector h, I should divide by the size of the vector h. The size of the vector h is given by the norm of h. So we'll spend 2 minutes talking about what the norm is. But let me write down the norm. Whatever that means. We'll talk about it in 2 minutes. So this is the norm in h of of h. Where is h? H is in Rn. So this is the norm in Rn. Okay? F a plus h. Now this makes perfect sense because this is something which is in Rk. It's a vector. I'm dividing it by a scalar. And this also is a vector. I want to say that that is a vector. However, it is better to, instead of writing this quantity down, it is better to write, at this stage, to write scalars on both sides. So I want the size of this vector. The size of this vector is the norm of this vector. And where should all these things be? Fa plus h is an Rk, Fa is an Rk, and this is also something that I want to be in Rk. So this should be the norm in Rk. And what I want is that this ratio must tend to 0. Now one has to be slightly careful here. Where is h? H is an element in Rn. This is an Rk, this is an Rk, this quantity is an Rk, but h is an element in Rn. But this quantity, I cannot subtract two vectors in two different vector spaces. They have to be in the same vector space. So LH itself should be a vector in Rk. But H is a vector in Rn. H is a vector in Rn. Therefore, this quantity, if it has to be a vector in Rk, this business L that I'm talking about, this operation L that I must talk about, must be something that takes a vector in Rn and gives you a vector in Rk. So L is a linear map if there exists an L which is a linear map from Rn to Rk. This is the space of linear maps from these two, between these two vector spaces. So if there exists an L which is from Rn to Rk, which is a linear map from Rn to Rk, such that limit when x tends to 0. So here also I can put a norm h in Rn. This 0 is in R. This is a ratio of two real numbers. So this quantity is a real number. So this ratio is in R, and I'm talking about equal to 0. This is a 0. This 0 is a real number. So one has to be careful about where each of these terms lie. Now this statement makes perfect sense. That we say that if there exists an L such that this limit exists, then we say that f is differentiable at A, then derivative of f at A is denoted by L. So the derivative of f at A, which is L, I should write here. So the derivative of f at A is a linear map between Rn and Rk. So this itself will create, so we call L as a derivative of f at A. So note that the derivative of f at A is an element in linear map from Rn to Rk. I have not said that, so I should write here A is in Rk. A is in R of the domain, that is Rn. So the derivative of f at A is a linear map from Rn to Rk. Now here itself you have to be slightly careful, because if you look at quite a few texts of what you may have learned earlier about the derivative, the statement you had was that the derivative of a function from Rn to Rk is a k by n matrix, okay, whose entries are given by the partial derivatives of f, the various components of f. So the statement is that the derivative of a function at a point is a matrix. Whereas what I'm saying here is that the derivative of a function at a point is a linear map. As it stands, there's no contradiction between these two statements, because you know that every linear map can be represented as a matrix after a choice of basis. Okay? And every matrix represents a linear map. So there really is no contradiction to these two statements. However, conceptually, there is quite a bit of difference between these two statements. And conceptually, you should always think of the derivative of a function as being a linear map. Thinking of the derivative of a function as being a matrix creates problems which we will come to very soon. It's in a little while ourselves. Yeah. So always the derivative of a function at a point is a linear map. If you have to do some calculations, then maybe in those calculations it is useful to think of the derivative of a function as a matrix consisting of the partial derivatives of the function f. Notice now that in this setup that I have here, Rn and Rk, and I'm talking about norms, there is nothing special that I'm using about Rn. So this definition that I'm giving is true not just in Rn, which of course is a finite dimensional real vector space, but the same definition also holds in any norm linear space. So I will spend 2 minutes talking about what I mean by this norm. So norm, what is the meaning of a norm? So this is also an idea that you have come across earlier, that if you have a real number, say z is in R, all of us know what is meant by mod z, the absolute value of z. Okay? So similarly, we have also come across what we mean by a distance in R2. So for example, if x1, x2 equal to x is in R2, and similarly with y equal to y1, y2, then the distance between x and y is nor x minus y. I will call it the R2 norm, which is x1 minus x2, x1 minus y1 squared plus x2 minus y2 squared to the 1/2. This is what I mean by a norm. There are many norms in Rn, and fortunately all these norms on a finite dimensional vector space are equivalent. So in particular, if x is equal to x1 up to xn and y is equal to y1, yn, the norm of x minus y in Rn is defined to be summation xi minus yi squared I equal to 1 to n to the 1/2. This is the norm in Rn. It's called the Euclidean norm in Rn, and this is actually the most important norm for us in any case. It doesn't really matter which norm you choose for various reasons, and therefore we are going to be choosing the Euclidean norm, and there will be one stage where we will have to stop for these things. So there is one more thing I want to point out here, that instead of, I'm going to write it transpose. Just to keep it in mind, all vectors are going to be column vectors. And it is difficult to write column vectors because they take up too much space. Therefore, we write them as row vectors.